So, I just graduated a couple of months ago, and like most people, I was scrambling to find a job. It's not like I had a ton of experience or anything, but I had a degree, and I was pretty eager to start working. My parents kept telling me that the real world was going to be tough, but I didn't think too much about it. I just wanted to start earning and proving to myself that I could handle being an adult. I finally got this internship at a mid-sized company. It wasn't exactly what I had in mind. I was hoping for something a little more related to what I studied, but it paid decently and it was full-time. My parents were proud of me for landing something so quickly, and honestly, I was just relieved. The first couple of days were fine. I showed up early, wore my best, well, my only suit, and tried my best to make a good impression. Most of the colleagues were okay. They were older than me, but not by much. A few were friendly enough, making small talk here and there, but I couldn't shake this feeling that they saw me as the kid. Like any time I asked a question or tried to offer an idea, there'd be this pause, followed by a polite but condescending explanation. I brushed it off. It's an internship, I thought. I'm here to learn, not to impress anyone. Then there was my boss. Let's just call him Mr. Carlson. He wasn't old, probably late 30s or early 40s, but he had this energy about him that made the whole office tense. He rarely smiled, and when he did, it felt fake, like it didn't reach his eyes. At first, I didn't think he had anything against me. He gave me the usual welcome speech, handed me some simple tasks, and told me to work hard and show initiative. But within a week, things started feeling off. For one, he'd call me out in meetings over the smallest things. If I didn't understand something right away, he'd sigh loudly and say stuff like, "Didn't they teach you this in school?" Or, "I thought this generation was supposed to be tech savvy." It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said it, like I was wasting his time just by existing. Then he started piling up more work. "Can you handle this?" he'd ask, dropping a new project on my desk. "You're young, so you should have the energy for it." At first, I took it as a compliment. I wanted to prove myself, so I'd stay late, trying to get everything done perfectly. But no matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. He'd find the thinnest errors and make a big deal out of them in front of everyone. "Use the comma here," he said once, pointing at a report I spent hours on. "Do you think our clients are going to overlook mistakes like this?" Sloppy work reflects poorly on all of us. I felt my face heat up as my colleagues avoided eye contact. I started dreading going to work. My alarm would go off and my chest would get tight just thinking about the day ahead. But I couldn't quit. I needed the money, and every time I vented to my parents, they'd said the same thing. "Welcome to adulthood. Jobs are supposed to be hard. Stick it out, it will toughen you up." So I stuck it out. It got worse. One day, Carlson handed me a presentation to prepare for a big client meeting. He said it was my chance to prove myself, so I worked harder than I ever had. I stayed up all night perfecting it, double-checking every detail. When the day of the meeting came, I was nervous but excited. But as soon as I started presenting, Carlson cut me off. "Actually, I think we'll go in a different direction," he said, interrupting me mid-sentence. He pulled up a different version of the presentation, one I hadn't even seen, and took over. I stood there, frozen, as he tore apart everything I'd worked on. He even made a joke about how interns always think they know best, while the clients laughed awkwardly. That afternoon, Carlson called me into his office. "You embarrassed yourself today," he said, leaning back in his chair. "And you embarrassed me. I don't think this is working out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Sir, I did everything you asked." He held up a hand. "I don't need excuses. We are letting you go." I packed up my desk in a daze. A couple of colleagues muttered half-hearted sorries as I left, but most avoided me altogether. I walked out of the building, holding my box of stuff, feeling completely humiliated. When I got home, I just sat on my bed, staring at the wall. My parents didn't get it. They said things like, "It's just a stepping stone," or "You'll find something better." But all I could think was, is this what being an adult is supposed to be? I'd done everything right. I worked hard, stayed late, took every criticism in stride, and it still wasn't enough. It's been a few weeks now, and I'm still struggling to shake off the experience. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering what I could have done differently. But deep down, I know the problem wasn't me. Carson hated me for reasons I'll never understand. Maybe I reminded him of himself when he was younger. Maybe he just needed someone to take his frustrations out on. Whatever the reason, it doesn't make it any easier. I'm trying to move on, but the thought of starting another job terrifies me. What if this is just how life is now? I don't know. All I know is that I'm not ready to try again just yet. I graduated high school last year, and like most people my age, I needed a job. College wasn't in the cards for me, at least not right now. I figured I'd work for a year or two, save up some money, and then maybe figure things out later. Problem was, jobs in my town are hard to come by. I'd been scrolling through job boards for weeks when I found this ad. It wasn't super detailed, just said they needed a couple of construction workers to help out with the project. The pay was decent, and it said no experience was necessary. That sounded perfect for me. I figured I'd get to learn some new skills, and maybe it would lead to more work down the line. I emailed the guy, and he got back to me pretty quick. He told me to come by the next morning at 8 AM for an interview. He gave me an address, and I didn't think much of it. I mean, who checks out job interview locations beforehand? The next morning, I got up early and threw on my work boots and a hoodie. I grabbed my car keys and punched the address into my GPS. It was a little further out than I expected, on the edge of town, but I figured it was probably a site they were getting ready to demolish or something. As I got closer, the roads got emptier. Houses turned into warehouses, and even the warehouses looked abandoned. The GPS said I was a mile away when I started feeling uneasy. There weren't any signs of construction, no trucks, no equipment. Just a lot of overgrown grass and cracked asphalt. I figured I'd come this far, so I might as well check it out. Maybe it was a small company just getting started. When I pulled up, the place looked like it hadn't been touched in years. It was this big, empty warehouse with faded graffiti on the walls and a chain-like fence surrounding the property. I almost turned around right there, but then I saw a group of guys standing near the entrance. There were 3 of them, and all older than me, probably in their late 30s or early 40s. They were just standing there talking to each other. One of them noticed my car and nudged the others. They all turned to look at me. Something about the way they stared made my stomach knot up, but I told myself I was overthinking it. They probably just weren't used to seeing new faces out here. I parked my car and got out. As I walked toward them, I noticed something covered by a tarp next to them. It was big and lumpy, like maybe it was equipment or supplies. One of the guys stepped forward as I got closer. "You the kid from the ad?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound confident. The guy grinned, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of grin that made me want to turn around and run. "Well, look at that," he said, glancing over back at the others. "Fresh meat." The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. I'd tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe it was some weird joke. "Oh, so what's the job?" I asked, trying to sound casual. The other 2 guys started laughing, and I noticed they weren't looking at me. They were looking at each other like they were in on some secret. That's when I noticed the tarp again. It wasn't moving, but something about it felt off. I couldn't explain it, but I knew I didn't want to get any closer to it. One of the guys stepped forward, blocking my view. "Why don't we go inside and talk?" he said. I hesitated. "Nah, I think I'm good," I said, taking a step back. "Thanks anyway." Before I could turn around, the guy grabbed my arm. Not hard, but enough to make it clear I wasn't going anywhere. "What's the rush?" he said, his grin widening. My heart was pounding. I yanked my arm away and took another step back. That's when I noticed someone standing by my car. I hadn't even heard them walk up, but there they were, leaning against the driver's side door, staring at me. "Hey," I shouted. The guys by the entrance started laughing again. "You really shouldn't have come here," one of them said. That's when I bolted. I didn't even think about it, I just ran. I heard them shouting behind me, and when I looked over my shoulder, they were coming after me. There was no way I was getting to my car, so I ran towards the warehouse instead. The doors were hanging off their hinges, and the inside was dark and musty, but I didn't care. I just needed to hide. I ducked behind a stack of old crates and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type. I texted my brother. "Call the police. Warehouse on Maple. Hurry." I could hear them outside, their footsteps crouching on the gravel. They weren't shouting anymore, which somehow made it worse. I could hear them talking, but I couldn't make out the words. Then the footsteps got closer. I held my breath as they walked into the warehouse. One of them was whistling with a slow, lazy tune that made my skin crawl. "Come out, kid," one of them called. "We just wanna talk." I stayed as still as I could, trying not to make a sound. My heart was beating so hard I thought they'd hear it. The whistling stopped. "I think he's over here," someone said. I panicked. I looked around for something, anything I could use to defend myself, but the crates were empty. Just when I thought they were going to find me, I heard it. Police sirens. They weren't close yet, but they were loud enough to make the guys froze. "Let's go," one of them said. I waited until I was sure they were gone before I crawled out from the hiding spot. My legs were shaking so bad I could barely stand. When I finally got outside, my car was trashed. The tires were slashed and there was a note stuck under the wiper blade. "Next time, you won't be so lucky." I don't know what they were planning, and honestly, I don't want to know. I gave my statement to the police, but I don't think they ever caught the guys. It's been a few months, and I'm still jumpy every time I hear footsteps behind me. I don't know if they're still out there, watching me, but I haven't gone near that side of town since.